Tottenham Hotspur's 25-26 season kicks off tomorrow with the Super Cup against PSG. Yet another chance to win another European trophy. It's just really what we do at this point, isn't it? And we are playing against PSG. Obviously, don't let that Club World Cup result fool you. This is one of the best club sides that we've seen over the past decades. An amazing team coming off the back of a hugely successful season. And it's going to be a massive test for Tottenham Hotspur. Thomas Frank's first proper test at this level. A chance for trophy. The first ever final that he's played. And I'm super excited for the game. I'm really excited. In this video, we're going to talk about how I think we can beat PSG, how we can give ourselves the best chance possible of competing and getting a result. You never know. You do never know. A lot of people have written us off already, but I haven't. I do think that this side could potentially produce something pretty special, and we're going to get into that in this video. Let me know in the comment section what you think the score is going to be, how excited you are for the game, who you think is going to play, what the preferred lineup that you think we're going to put out will be, or what you would like to see us put out. If you are new to the channel as well, please subscribe, please like this video if you did enjoy it. That'd be greatly appreciated. And yeah, let's get into it. Now, the first thing that I wanted to touch upon was obviously Chelsea's performance in the Club World Cup final, because they absolutely dominated PSG. It was genuinely one of the best performances that I've seen from a side all season long last year, Chelsea's performance against PSG in the Club World Cup final, and it was amazing to watch. And I think there were some really interesting sort of tactical approaches that Enzo Maresca went into that game with. Some things that I think we could potentially try and replicate, some things that I think PSG will have probably worked out by now. And also, was it just an off day for PSG? Was it just a day where Chelsea performed to their absolute top level in terms of all over the pitch, all of those players on the pitch? And I think it's kind of a mixture of both. Now, you can see from this screenshot, which has been taken from Football Meta, I just wanted it to demonstrate sort of where the players were on the pitch. There were some really interesting tactical approaches, and Chelsea looked like this a lot of the time, out of possession, when they were pressing PSG, when they were also sitting a little bit deeper. There was so much rotation in this area of the pitch. Caicedo and Reece James, dropping into this back line at times to form a back five. Pedro Neto constantly running back towards his own goal, tracking Hakimi, almost forming a back five at times. With Cucurella tucking in as a left centre back, doing a lot of defensive work within the penalty area. Pedro Neto hanging out on that left hand side, really watching and marking Hakimi like a hawk. Levi Colwill and Trevor Chalobah stepping up into midfield at times to sort of try and outnumber PSG's midfield, and Enzo Fernandez pushing on to Vitinha and making his life hell. And it was really interesting to see, actually, because a lot of people were going into that game thinking, Chelsea are going to struggle not having as much of the ball. They're going to struggle to sort of hit PSG on the transition. They're going to struggle to hurt them. PSG and their sort of rotation is going to just overwhelm them completely. But there was obviously a bit of an element of luck to Chelsea's performance in terms of Robert Sanchez had an unbelievable game, both on and off the ball. The dual winners, PSG are normally a side where their physicality and technical quality, that mix just completely overwhelms teams. Whereas Chelsea were able to dominate those physical duels, the amount of second balls they won, the amount of individual battles that a lot of their players won. I mean, you think of the first goal, for example, Malo Gusto dominating and bullying Nuno Mendes on that left-hand side, or on that right-hand side for Chelsea, I should say, winning that ball, cutting it back to Cole Palmer, who obviously had a 10 out of 10 amazing game, and some of the positions that he was picking up was incredible in those pockets, sort of running off the back of Ruiz and João Neves. Caicedo and Reece James were perfect in that midfield in terms of when, Neves and Ruiz were rotating and looking to receive the ball in those pockets, when Dembele was dropping a bit deeper. They were just first to everything. They were reading the game perfectly. They were stepping up, stepping into those challenges aggressively, winning the ball back, turning the ball over, and leading to those breaks for Chelsea that proved to be so successful. So there was definitely, huge tactical elements to it, forming a back five at times, adapting to PSG's fluidity and adapting to PSG's rotation, and also just a huge focus on dual winners, a huge focus on players winning those individual battles, making their mark on those PSG teams, not letting somebody like a Vitinha dominate and have loads of time on the ball, not letting Hakimi have a free run in behind Marc Cucurella. And that's something that we're going to have to do as well, with a lot of luck involved in it, with off days from certain players involved in it. I didn't think João Neves had the best game. I didn't think that the PSG's front three had the best and most effective game. But also, you've got to applaud an incredible tactical performance. And what elements of that can Spurs take and go into the PSG game with? Now, I think what's going to be really interesting is obviously, first of all, what team he goes with, because it's you've got to have a blend really, because Chelsea, what they're also so good at was playing out of the back so calmly, beating that incredible PSG press by being almost perfect in their build-up. You know, players like Trevor Chalobah, players like Malo Gusto, some of the best I've seen them use the ball in their Chelsea careers, really, in that game. Levi Colwill was immense at it too. You know, Caicedo and Reece James looked after the ball so well, but then they also chose their moments to go long and to send those balls over the top of Nuno Mendes and Hakimi's head and get PSG turned round and put pressure on them and rely on their wingers in Neto and Gusto and Cole Palmer, etc., winning those duels and running those channels and working really, really hard. And I think the way that I think might be best for Spurs to set up, I was umming and ahhing between Paulinho and Bentancur, but I think Paulinho would just be slightly more suited to this role, despite the fact that I don't think he's fully up to speed yet or fully match fit, which could be a bit of a risk, but I think potentially a risk worth taking because, you know, Paulinho at his best is one of the best breakers of play, one of the best interceptors, one of the best tacklers, you know, such an intelligent footballer off the ball. And I think that kind of thing, you know, we have to utilise that strength in our squads against PSG. And I also think that he can do that job in terms of dropping in between the centre halves, forming a back five at times, sort of having that fluidity out of possession to drop in here, and maybe one of Van de Ven or Romero, as we know he loves to do, can step up into midfield, can step up onto Dembele, because it's not the usual threat with a striker where you've got one of them maybe trying to get up close to Van de Ven or Romero and sort of win that physical battle against them. And they're going to have three players rotating in between them. You know, they're not going to know who to pick up. They're not going to know at what point. And I think Paulinho dropping in there and making maybe their life a bit easier sometimes to be able to step up, to be able to maybe track a Dembele or track a Kvaratskhelia who's moving into those pockets and be a bit more alert, but also be a bit less sort of standoffish. And that, I think that's when you've seen PSG at their best this season so far, is when, you know, defenders have been standoffish. They don't want to commit. They don't want to move into midfield with those PSG players, and they're leaving space and they don't quite know what to do. They don't quite know what areas to occupy. And I think that's dangerous. So I think kind of almost defensively at times, you're going to see probably quite a narrow back five from Spurs out of possession. And it won't necessarily look like a back five on paper because, you know, Paulinho is a midfielder. You know, in possession when we're trying to play out from the back, it will definitely probably look a lot more like this. But I think in possession, like I said, you'll see a lot of this. You'll see Tottenham dropping deep. You will see Tottenham sitting in a low block. You'll see Sarr probably coming back into this position when PSG have got the ball, and Sarr and Bergval's energy potentially in this area. Yeah, you might see Bentancur as well used instead of Bergval, and it will be kind of a similar setup when you're seeing that energy in that midfield. And again, those two midfielders are going to have to be so alert and first to everything. Pap Sarr is going to be hugely important in this game. They've got to be first to everything in that midfield. You know, if Fabian Ruiz and Vitinha and João Neves are rotating positions and dropping into the pockets, trying to pick up the balls, you've got Dembele coming over your shoulder, trying to pick up the ball in this position, as we know he loves to do. Kvaratskhelia and Doué moving inside the field as well. They're going to have like 5 or 6 different threats around them they've got to be aware of at all times, and there's never going to be the same 2 threats coming in a row. I also think that the team has to set up to win physical duels. So I think that's why he might favour somebody like a Rodrigo Bentancur over a Bergval, even though I think Bergval's, you know, easily holds his own. But it's about finding that balance, because if you've got Paulinho, Sarr, Romero, Van de Ven, Spence, you know, even players like Kudus, Dom Solanke, if he's back fit in time, which I hope he will, I really hope he will be, which is why I've chucked him in there. There's going to be a huge focus on winning those physical duels and gaining that physical edge over PSG, where we're not going to have the technical edge, to be completely honest. We're just not going to have that. And I think Vicario's got to be very smart with how he uses the ball too. I think, you know, if you're looking at on the ball in a game like this, I think someone like Kinski, with the accuracy and the calmness under pressure and the ability that he has with his feet, would be an option. But I think that you can't drop Vicario. Obviously, that shot-stopping ability could be so huge for us, and he is still our number one choice goalkeeper, of course. But I think you'll see our midfield, like I said, out of possession looking quite like this. I think with Paulinho joining to make a back 3 at times. I don't think you'll see Thomas Frank set up with a back 3. I mean, maybe it's something he looks at for sure, but I think that this setup would serve us quite well. I think whoever plays on that left-hand side as well, like I said, is going to have a big job, especially when we're maybe moving up the pitch a little bit higher, when the ball's turned over. They're going to have a massive job to do in terms of tracking Hakimi up and down this left-hand side for us, the right-hand side for PSG, of course. And Mohamed Kudus the same. You know, Nuno Mendes, he's not going to we can't allow Nuno Mendes to just carry the ball like we know that he can do 40, 50 yards up the pitch. Kudus is going to have to be right there with him. It's going to have to be an incredibly disciplined performance off the ball. And I think for large parts of the game, you'll see us looking like this, like set up completely in our own half. And that's where the ball carriers come into play. That's where how we use the ball suddenly becomes incredibly important. I think it's where somebody like Mohamed Kudus becomes so important, receiving the ball in these kind of areas. We're going to need him to have a field day, Mohamed Kudus. We're going to need him to be unbelievable because, unfortunately, at this point, we don't have Savinho through the door yet. We don't have Eze. Obviously, no Maddison, no Dejan Kulusevski. We're short of options creatively and ball carrying wise out on the wings and, in possession in those attacking areas. And I think Mohamed Kudus is going to have to be somebody who links everything. He links, attack and defence. Is also why somebody like a Dominic Solanke being fit is so important, because of his hold-up play and the way he links up play would be invaluable in a game like this. Richarlison just doesn't have that to the same level. He's not as physically intense as Solanke. He's not as quick thinking. He's not as strong as Dominic Solanke is at this point. And, I think those injuries are really hampering Richarlison, what you're able to see from him now that he's back fit. So I think Dominic Solanke being back fit, even if he's, 70, 80% fit, I think, the way that we're going to take this game very seriously, of course, is a European trophy, right? Dominic Solanke gets put back in there. I'd even be tempted with somebody like a Matisse Tell to use in a different sort of role, somebody to stretch that PSG back four and make those runs in behind if Dominic Solanke is not fit. He's obviously also somebody who works incredibly hard. And I think I'd, potentially if Dominic Solanke is not available, I think I might be tempted to go with Tell over Richarlison as somebody who can get him behind, stretch that PSG defence and maybe leave more space for Kudus to pick up the ball in these kind of pockets here and drive forward there, sort of into these areas here. A lot you saw, Cole Palmer doing against PSG with João Pedro running those channels, getting in behind, causing a nuisance link-up play too. I think Tell's got quite good link-up play. I really do, especially if he's given that opportunity to do that. So I think that's something that could work quite nicely. But for now, I'm going to go with Dominic Solanke to play. So, there'll be huge responsibility on a lot of these players. I think Pape Sarr is also going to be somebody who's hugely important, both in and out of possession, especially maybe when PSG are playing out from the back. We're looking to press a little bit higher. Pape Sarr will have such a key role in terms of getting on Vitinha, not allowing Vitinha to have that time of the ball, almost doing a man-marking job at times on Vitinha, because he is the heartbeat of that PSG team. He's the player who's going to have 100, 200 touches during the game, silly amounts of passes. And I think perhaps, you've seen him dominate games and run games for PSG in ways this season that we've not seen from a midfielder in a little while, which is why he's in those sort of Ballon d'Or discussions. Not that I think he'll win them, but Pape Sarr is probably one of the best sort of hustlers in Europe at the moment in terms of that energy, that engine, that box that he's got on him, you know what I mean? It's incredible, and I think we need to utilise that against Vitinha and sort of have Sarr on Vitinha for large parts of the game, make his life hell, don't allow him to just sit and dictate the game. I think Lucas Bergvall as well, similarly is going to have to be really disciplined in the spaces that he occupies. He's also going to have a big role to play in terms of us coming out from the back, playing out from the back. His ball carrying ability will be important if he's playing more on this left hand side and he's combining with Jed Spence and Wilson Odegaard on this left hand side. He's going to have to really sort of make sure his passes are crisp, he's using the ball well, he's not taking too many touches, he's releasing it when he needs to, but also carrying the ball into space like we've seen him do at so many points last season. One of our players of the season, if not our player of the season last season, and we're going to need the kind of performance that we got from him last season at large points in this game. And this is kind of where it just gets highlighted. Like, every player is going to have a 10 out of 10 performance if we're going to beat this PSG team. We're going to have a bit of luck involved. Vicario is going to have to make some big saves, because with their quality, the way that they rotate, they are going to get chances and they are probably going to score. And, we're going to have to be super, super disciplined, but also pick our moments on the break. The worry with this team potentially is that we're just so deep and we just can't get out, which is why I think it's so vitally important that Solanke's there, sort of win those flick-ons, hold the ball up, allow players like Kudus and potentially Odegaard on that left-hand side, or Tell or Johnson or whoever it is, to run past him. Sarr and Bergvall are going to have to be exceptional on the ball and off the ball, a bit like Caicedo and James were in that midfield. It's going to take us winning a lot of duels, winning a lot of second balls, being first to everything. We've had that full pre-season where PSG haven't. They've obviously had the Club World Cup and had time off until this game, and we need to use that to our advantage. Hopefully we're in slightly better shape, slightly fitter than PSG, despite the fact PSG were just one of the fittest teams as well last season. So, it's going to be tough. It's going to be really, really, really tough for Tottenham Hotspur. I think we'll see that 4-5-1 out of possession. We'll see that really deep defensive low block, out of possession. But I think we'll see, hopefully a better performance than we've seen in pre-season so far on the ball. Players, using the ball slightly better. Romero and Pedro Porro on this right-hand side, who we haven't even spoke about, picking up the ball in those sort of areas. Playing the passes into Papsar. Porro's little clip balls down the line to Mohamed Kudus, playing those balls over the top to Solanke. These kind of things are going to be so, so important. And this is how I'd set up. This is the team that I would go with. I think this is the best blend of physicality and dual winners mixed with, the sort of tactics that I think Thomas Frank can deploy, but also giving us the best chance to hit them on the break and play out of the back and sort of exploit those spaces that PSG do leave when they are attacking. I think, it could be tempting to go with a back five and potentially lose one of those midfielders in there and play maybe Romero in the middle with pretend Paulinho Danso out there. But I think, you might lose a little something. I don't think it would change loads, but I think, you'd lose that extra midfielder in there. I think Odobert is key to play. So I think ball retention is key for our wingers in this game as well. I think Kudus and Odobert give you the best chance of progressing up the pitch when we have the ball, just because I think they use the ball the best out of our wingers. They retain possession, recycle possession. That will be important to relieve pressure and to give our side a break. And I think that's the best blend. I could definitely see Tell playing up front if Solanke's not fit. I don't think Richarlison would be the worst option in there as well. He's somebody who can hold the ball up and he can stretch the defence at times. It's just I still don't think he's anywhere near being back to that level that he was pre all of the injuries for us in terms of, that explosive movement, that physical aspect to his game. If Destiny Udogi's fit, you could even be tempted to go Spence and Udogi just for those 1v1 dual winners at fullback, two of the best 1v1 defenders, in the league, in Udogi and Spence, in my opinion. In particular, Spence and Udogi, some of the performances that he's had up against some of the toughest wingers in the league have been immense at times. And I think Porro, obviously that is where he's slightly weaker, but I think Spence and Udogi sort of carrying the ball out from the back could be very, very useful too. I don't really see anybody else getting a chance. Davies won't play, Vuskovic probably not. Johnson, he might play Johnson, but I think it's just such a risk in terms of when we are looking to relieve that pressure. Johnson is not somebody who holds onto the ball. He's a final action. He's a penalty box player. And we're not going to be in the penalty area of PSG that often. I don't think Johnson would be allowed to have the impact on the game that he wants to have or needs to have. And I think it'd be a little bit concerning if Johnson was in the starting lineup just from that point of view. I think, potentially could be Tell on the left-hand side as well, just for a bit more of a goal threat in that front three, I guess. But I think that's what I've settled on. I think that's what I like. Like I said, Papsar and Vitinha is going to be such a key battle. Paulinho dropping into that back five, sort of Van de Ven, Paulinho, Romero, all choosing their moments to step up, to get onto Dembele, but also, being aware that they are leaving space in behind and making sure that they are covering each other. And look, when you saw Colwill, Chalobah, Caicedo when he dropped in, Reece James when he dropped in, they were all covering each other and dovetailing so well. And that's incredibly difficult to do for 90 minutes, which is why it's such a tough ask for us to obviously beat and compete with PSG. But I believe, you've got to believe that you can do it. It would have been lovely if we'd have had an Eze or a Savinho for this game. Obviously, they've not been signed officially by Tottenham Hotspur yet. We're still in kind of early talks, it feels like, for the both of them. So hopefully those deals get over the line at some point and we're able to see them moving on into the new season. I'll be back with a breakdown of this game, obviously, afterwards on Thursday. Hopefully we've won. Hopefully we have another European trophy under our belts. Let me know, like I said, how you would set up in the comment section down below. Let me know how you sort of nullified those PSG threats as best we can. Let me know if you disagree with anything I said in this video, of course, and like, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I will see you in the next one.